Wow.
Good
Hello,
afternoon.
hi, good afternoon, everybody. Today we have a lovely lady called Deb Day. Deborah, is it Deborah or Deb?
Deb.
Just Deb. Okay, so Deb. And we're going to be talking about conscious living and about grief. Not all grief is to do with losing people. So we're just going to have a little conversation for the next half an hour. Hopefully, we won't go over too much. um, so, yes, hi, Deb. It's lovely to meet you.
Hi,
And
Amanda. It's so nice to be here with you too.
good. So,
Yeah,
I'm going to hit it straight off because we have some questions to ask.
excellent.
So, the first question is, what are some of the biggest challenges people face after significant loss? And how do they help to navigate? How do you help to navigate these emotions?
Well, when someone experiences deep loss, for example, the grieving process begins when somebody loses someone close to them. Also, the grieving process begins when someone's had a deep loss in any way,
Yeah,
like they've lost a job after 20 years, or
yeah,
they've lost the ability to physically do things that they used to be able to do and they no longer can. They experience loss when something external interferes with how their life is going
yes,
and something happens to them.
yeah.
So people experience grief symptoms from loss. And the first thing that normally happens, and this is according to The Five Stages of Grief by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who kind of created a way of being able to describe what the emotional experience is for someone when they have a
What was her
significant
name?
loss.
What was
Elizabeth
her? Elizabeth? Yeah,
Kubler-Ross.
Ross. I like to look people up. You know, when you hear a name, you think, oh, I need to look at that. Okay, yeah. And she has 5 stages of grief.
She determined that there are five stages of grief, and the first is the initial phase, which is shock, which happens immediately after the loss.
Yeah,
And then the first reaction is denial, where people are having a hard time understanding what's really happened. They haven't quite accepted it yet because
yeah.
you can't, you need time to process these emotions.
Yeah, so I suppose it's not just in loss, as you say,
Hmm.
it's even if a marriage breaks down. It's the same type of thing, isn't it? Because
Absolutely.
people get in denial of what's going on. They don't accept it.
Correct.
Um, yeah, so
I
and
agree.
shock. So yeah, so shock is the first one, yeah?
Yes. And I'm going to just say that sharing the five stages of grief is a way that I work with people to kind of help them understand what's happening to them. Because building that self awareness is critically important because now
Absolutely.
their whole world has shifted quite a bit because of
Yeah.
this specific loss. And they need to have an opportunity to embrace what's happened. And they can't do that if they're not really aware of what's happening to them. So, the initial stage of denial after the original shock, and then anger when they realize that how do they deal with this new change?
Yeah.
Why would this happen? Why is it happening to me? Why is this so unfair? And they can't help but, as a human, want to blame someone for taking this
Yeah.
from them. And then the third stage involves bargaining. So,
Oh,
usually,
okay.
that is the way that hope comes through eventually.
Yeah,
And the negotiation for, you know, this extended life in exchange for what they already had before. People are facing, you know, this trauma, but they have to like bargain to seek a compromise to really be able to cope with it.
yeah. And I think the whole thing is people are actually live in fear of actually feeling it,
Hmm.
because grief, when people come to see me, the last sort of year, I seem to be the last two or three clients are coming because through grief of losing their parent.
Yes.
Um, so we go through the grieving process of that, and people are afraid to feel. They don't realize that they do actually have to feel grief, and the sooner they feel it, I don't know if I'm saying the right thing or not, the sooner they
No,
actually allow themselves to feel it, it's like going diving into a swimming pool. This is how I tell them. It's like diving into a swimming pool, and it's a very long swimming pool. And then you come up the other side. And sometimes when you come back, you're not the same person.
yes.
But when you come out the other side, I mean, you're not that same person anymore.
No, you
Uh,
can't be.
no, that's right. And that's what they find so hard to adapt themselves to.
The adaptive process will occur naturally, but you're right. The feeling of all the feelings
Yeah,
is really big.
yeah,
And people are afraid to feel that
yes,
deeply. And of course, we can only grieve deeply because we loved deeply.
absolutely.
When
Yeah,
you love so fully, this is the price of admission for love.
yeah.
And
But
so,
better to have loved.
yeah, it is
I,
because you have loved that you will have loss. Even when it's love for self and you lose something that you can no longer have available to you. Like someone will experience this kind of a grief experience when they lose a limb or when they lose the use of
yes,
their legs, or, if something, really traumatic happens to them, they'll go through this experience. And then they might experience depression,
yeah,
because they might be really sad. Some of those emotions and things that they have to feel and experience include that.
yeah,
What's the point? Why am I still here? What in the world would make it special for me to keep going? Like it's
yeah,
hard to imagine what the real purpose is to still be
yeah,
here after having something dramatic like that occur. And then eventually getting to accept it. Like, okay, I might as well embrace because it's a fact. It has occurred. This is
yeah,
real, and sometimes sitting down and finally pulling out a journal to write
yeah,
all the feelings is the benefit of having somebody guiding them through this
yeah,
painful stage. This is the navigating. But, first and foremost, being able to share their thoughts and feelings with someone in a safe space, free
yes,
of judgment,
yeah,
with a welcoming, open hearted space is very
yeah.
important.
Because I found that lots of people, they bottle this stuff up, and
And
people,
they'll step
men,
over it.
yeah, and men particularly, because women are, I don't know, women sort of like, not that there's a massive difference between men and women. Don't get me wrong, chaps. But women tend to talk it out. They haven't got a problem with talking out, but some men think that they won't be they sort of less of a man if they cry, or if they sort of, I can't do that. I can't talk about it because I'm a man.
Yeah,
I can't cry because I was told by my parents, like, big boys don't cry.
that's right.
When in fact, if you just cry, that is a form of release, is a cry.
Yes, it is.
And when I went through grief of my own, with my father, who passed so quickly, and being a daddy's girl was really hard. And you're right, I was in shock for quite some time. Um,
Yes.
but you see, the thing is with me, I'm a person that thinks there is good in everything. I'm not saying that I wanted my dad to pass, but I see the good. It was my dad's time.
Yeah.
And once I accepted that, I actually started my journey of spirituality, because there was no way that my dad was going to allow me to become on my spiritual path. Um, and now, if my dad ever visits me, he just laughs, because I see things and hear things, and people often pop in when I'm like giving massages or talking to people. Sometimes their relatives pop in, and I just think, oh God, I don't want to start saying, well, yeah, your grandma's here now, and like, because not everybody can understand that, but they
Sure.
do pop in because I'm sort of, I get lots of people, but that's not what I want to do. I would just want to help people um, see a brighter side, because there is a brighter side, you know.
There is. I think that you brought up something really powerful, and that is when you said when you lost your father, that began your journey of spirituality.
Yeah,
I can share with you that the same thing happened for me when I lost my husband suddenly due to complications from diabetes. I also found that to be the beginning of a transformative phase in my life. And I can tell you that in the past 12 years since he's passed, I have learned so much, and I have become capable of seeing that the beauty of his life
yes,
also left me with this huge surprise of enormous gifts on the other side of my grief that I could never have anticipated. I
yeah,
couldn't possibly imagine could happen. I started to see that it was necessary for me to continue in my life was going to require that I honor myself in order
yeah,
to honor his memory,
yes,
which meant live a life based on truth, authenticity, really follow the spirituality journey, because that was where my purpose lie.
yeah,
And it was hard for me to see what that purpose was when he first passed.
yes,
And I felt like I was taken along the ride
yeah,
with him, that there was only some of me left behind. And that was an opportunity for me to
yeah,
create
yes,
something beautiful in that which was missing, if
yeah,
that makes any sense.
yes,
So that brings me to the next phase, like acceptance
yeah,
of the grief strategy, the grief, the 5 stages of grief, rather.
yes,
There is acceptance, like it's going to be okay. I might as well. prepare for it. Um, really starting to embrace my own mortality and
Yeah.
that there is a future still here for me to live. There is still a life. There are, you know, people who survive losing somebody
Yeah.
really, really close to them and starts to set the stage for having a different perspective on what my life can be about.
Yeah.
And
And
I
living
think,
with purpose, though, isn't it, as well?
yeah. And at the same time, I'm beginning to slowly come to a place where I can start appreciating the wonderful things about him instead of being so devastated and sad,
Yeah.
brokenhearted, lonely, and confused, and all of the emotions that I was in a battle with in the very beginning.
Yeah.
I came through those initial phases. And I think that is the first few levels of awareness that people need to see and experience to navigate
Yeah.
life. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I think absolutely. Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm sort of almost I'm getting closer and closer to the screen, when you yes, it's brilliant. The next one was grief is deeply personal and affects everybody differently, which I think we touched on anyway, didn't we? Um, how would you help individuals rebuild their lives um, at their own pace? Because some people are, well, everybody is so different. And I found that my grief came in like waves. I would
Yes.
be going along the road, going really quite nicely and actually smiling. And then all of a sudden, I get this wave of just come over me of sadness.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I watched it in the end and I thought it came up and it peaks like that and then comes back down. But if you just sit and be with that wave, sometimes it can last 5 minutes, sometimes it can last an hour, but it will pass. I found, I found with me, I don't know.
It will, because emotions, as we know, are energy in motion.
Yep.
When something comes on like that,
Yeah.
and it affects your nervous system, you have that energy coming in that brings you to that stage of sadness and crying, and it's just a big wave. You do get to learn that that's something you can accept, and it's
Yeah.
a opportunity to keep processing your grief because
Yes.
the only way through your grief is literally to experience these emotions. So the fact
Yeah.
that you're having that happen is good
Yeah.
news because it means that you are
Yes.
in a healthy way going through, because the only way to process grief is to go through it. You can't go
Yeah.
around it and you can't step over it, like I was
No.
saying earlier. Yes, men, I think, but some women too, have a difficulty really harnessing the meaning in all of those emotions that they're experiencing, and they're not sure what to do with those feelings. They're big. And especially
Yeah.
people who, are really empathetic people, empathy is huge. And so
Yes.
it really can be all encompassing and a little scary and leave
Yeah.
you in a state of paralysis. Like you can't
Yes.
do anything, you're stuck in a space.
Yes.
And I think long term grief ends up being more about that. Like there are still pieces
Yeah.
that, for whatever reason, you had to step over because you've got to function in your life. You have to keep
Yes.
going and live your life, right? There are parts, I think, of your grieving experience that
Yeah.
you get to be fully processed. And that's where the work that I do comes in, where I'm supporting people on that journey to be
Yeah.
able to release some of those blockages and also start to reconnect with their vision they've always had for themselves
Yeah, absolutely.
and, begin the process of having the confidence that they can rebuild a life as
Yes.
the person they really are with the gifts the person left them with or the gifts that they received from that loss
Yep.
and pull those things in so that you can have that opportunity and it can only be at
Yes.
their own pace. It can only be done.
Yeah, because that's really weird because Alan Watts, I think do you know Alan Watts? Oh, you must know Alan Watts. Oh, well, somebody I listen to on the internet
Mhm.
because it's so weird how we're talking about, and I've just because he says that to step into the unknown, which is like almost after loss,
Yeah.
it's death to the old self, but it's also birth to the new self.
There is a big piece of that identity
Yeah.
shift that is very, very challenging for people to navigate. And
Yes.
I think that is a deep dive for most people
Yeah.
to really see that depth of awareness of what their identity was before the
Yeah.
law and what they're creating going forward. That is
Yeah. Yeah,
really
because I
big.
when I lost both of my parents, I mean, I'm saying my parents because they're a long time past now, but when it first happened, when I lost both of them, I sort of found myself, well, who am I? Who am I without my parents? I felt like I was so lost because I thought, okay, and I actually did take myself off to a spiritual retreat because I was so lost that I went off to this retreat place. And while I was there, the beautiful people I met, so beautiful. And I almost went away to find myself.
Yeah.
But when I came back from that weekend, I was not the same person because somebody had sat with me and spoke to me about it. And I thought, wow, yeah, I'm really into all this. And that's why now I try to help others because life can be good again.
Life can be extraordinary
Yeah,
and it can be a big surprise and it can be exciting and fulfilling. And
yes,
then you are able to embrace and take emboldened action,
yes,
start to build for that.
absolutely.
You said something about going away,
Yeah,
be able to experience what you needed to experience with that big question, who am I without?
yeah,
Don't you think it's interesting to recognize that to live without, you have to live within?
absolutely.
You have to be able to take a look and do the work within to be without.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that's where you rekindle the love you had for that person. You're able to see finally with that full
yeah,
awareness that you can breathe and you can create and you can move,
yes,
can build and interact and do the things that you are being called to do on that spiritual journey because
yeah,
in order to honor their memory, honoring yourself meant you had to go within because you were without. There you are in the
yeah,
middle of that kind of awareness, which is empowering and
yeah,
which leads you back to your self-love and your self-worth and your value in the world, and why you're really able to contribute because you've lived through that.
Yeah. Because I think people, they look when they're going through grief, or not necessarily grief, life itself, not doesn't have to be grief, but just life sometimes can get really hard. But if you stop for a moment, if you are looking for anything outside of yourself, you're not going to find what you're looking for, because everything you're looking for is within here. If you can learn, and for the people that are out there going, what is she talking about? Once you start to learn that what you're looking for and all the answers you're looking for are deep within you, learn to sit with yourself, come back home to yourself, life can be amazing. I love my life. My life is wonderful. I am on my own, but I am not alone. Because I
Right.
have myself, and that learning, that is what I try to teach a lot of young people, is that learn to love yourself first, and then the love that you are seeking will automatically come. And if it doesn't, so be it. But I suppose as a young person it's different. But I see these lovely young girls that think they're looking for the love outside of themselves, when all they need to do is come inside.
I think that maybe that's true for a lot of people. And it be for it that they get to have a connection with someone that reminds them to settle into their breath
Yes.
so that they have a pathway within to
Yeah,
experience that love. And we can talk about
absolutely.
this a little bit more in our
Yes.
next session because I
Yes.
think
We
we're
better
running
write that
out of
down.
time.
Let's write that down. Are we on our time now? Have we had our,
Yes,
oh my gosh, that went so quick.
I know.
Okay, darling. Well, I shall see you all again next week. And if you have any questions for Deb or myself, do put them in the comments underneath, and we'll see if we can answer them for you. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. That's it for this week, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
And hello,
darling.
everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for
Lovely.
listening.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.